need to be locked up forever hysteria that went on. They had what they call the West Memphis 3. Have you ever heard of that? They have documentaries on it.
I haven't, but I mean, I think this is good. That's all good stuff we can talk about on this. I can kick it off, and then we can start going into stories about it. And then
you should look that up. You should look up West Memphis 3 on your computer, so you have some facts at hand to talk about or to discuss with that. Because Damien Echols was the main one. They pinged him as the ringleader of this satanic cult out there in Arkansas or West Memphis or wherever the hell it was that they were. Apparently, they were living on the border, and and they gave him a life sentence. Actually, they gave him a death penalty. What am I talking about? They gave him a death penalty. They gave the other two kids life sentences and locked them up. And he did his whole entire time in administrative segregation. And eventually, after 18 years of being in prison, they were exonerated. These three guys, they didn't do the crimes they were accused of, and they were let out.
I think I do know the story, actually.
But to get out, they came to them and told them, "Look, we'll let you out, but you have to sign a confession saying that you're guilty. You have to sign a guilty thing, saying, and so that you can't come back and sue us and get money from the state for us having incarcerated you and told the whole world that you were Satanists and murdered 3 children and all this." But he talks a lot about what happened to him, the effects of segregation. He's written books about it, and he's been on television. As a matter of fact, I think I saw him on The View one time where he was talking about it. He walks with a cane now. He says the reason why he walks with a cane is from being in segregation. And he says his vision went bad in there because he never was looking at anything further than the cell walls. Yes, I mean the physical parts of his time in seg just he fell to pieces. I will say this: he seems at least to have maintained his sanity.
This story is awful. It just gets fucking word like it's like I haven't even gotten to the point where they've convicted him yet, but it's just getting. This is getting crazier and crazier.
The only reason I say I brought this guy up, I'm like thinking, man, these guys are using this one case as their example. Of course, are you reading from the actual lawsuit or is that an article?
I'm reading from the Britannica website, the encyclopedia. That's where this is. Holy crap.
That's where this is about.
One of the leading witnesses against him had an IQ of 72.
I think that was one of the guys that get a life sentence to. Whenever it all came out,
Okay, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That is.
Yeah, because whenever the tide had finally changed and he had gotten some attention finally, and they started reviewing his case, and they found, and it was becoming more and more obvious that they could not have possibly murdered these children. And not only did they not murder these children, that there was never even a satanic murder. All this crap that the cops had made up was ridiculous. It was pure hysteria. I mean, a modern day witch hunt in the truest sense of the word. But
the prosecution also introduced evidence it believed incriminating, such as the fact that Echols read Stephen King and listened to Metallica.
That's what they did to me. That's how they convicted me. They brought my comic books up that I was reading in prison, things like that. They brought people, man, they tried to, oh my God, I don't even want to get into that crap. That could spoil my mood. Going down that hole, but no, yeah, that was like I'm saying. That was a part of the in that day and age in the early '90s. They had a real hysteria about kids, these cops, a crime would happen, and then the cops would immediately claim, they would come up with the wildest, craziest theories as to what happened and apply it, and then the media would run with it. It took all that. I mean, throughout the whole 90s, you could not convince anybody in the media that Damien Echols was not some kind of satanic cult leader. Well, they were convinced.
Maybe we should talk about that, because here's the thing about that. Because I read like 3 sentences in, and I already knew where this story was going. Because one of the things I had to research, one of the things I studied when I was in prison as part for my college degree, was basically I can't remember what class it was in. It wasn't criminology; it was some different class. But I studied up on cult crimes and occult crimes, and crimes. They have a really hard time keeping track of how many of these Satan worship crimes, like how many people are killed due to Satan worship. And sometimes the number is really high. I'm going to try and find out. But the number may be actually 0. There may have never been anyone killed for Satan worship in this country. But the thing is whenever they bring it up, it always
there's people that want to believe that, though. There's so many people that want it's the craziest shit.
Right.
Whenever they and all they got to do is flash your face on TV, and there's a murder that happens, or somebody's dead, and the reason why is because you're a Satanist. And man, I'm talking about that is so devastating. I mean, your case is lost from the beginning due to the hysteria that's going to surround your case.
Right, because
and if you're a teenager like Damien Echols at the time, you're double lost because you have no money and you don't know shit about shit or how to fight a case anyway.
Oh yeah, well he had mental issues from the beginning. So
Damien Echols?
Yeah, Damien Echols.
Really, I didn't know that.
I think that's what it was saying. I'll double check.
I didn't know if that was him or that was the other guy. The one that they gave the life sentence to, the other one that testified against him, he signed the witness statements or signed the confession and all that other stuff. Whenever they finally came back and said, look, your case has been reopened, and then they went to him and said, all you got to do is sign some kind of a confession or a guilty statement, and we'll let you go. He refused to do it because prison. He was this guy was so profoundly. I don't want to say profoundly retarded, but he was so I'm not even sure what the word is, but he liked it there, and he didn't want to be released. His time in prison was. He had grown so accustomed to it over that 18 years, he didn't want to leave. And so Damien Echols, who was facing the death penalty, I mean, his time was ticking away at that point, had to work some real magic to get word to this guy to get him to actually sign the papers to get him out. Whenever he was on The View, what was the name of that conservative girl that was married to the football player that was on The View for a while? I think it was Elizabeth Hasselbeck. I want to say it was her name, right?
That might be, yeah. Elizabeth
she was married to some football player named Hasselbeck. Whenever Damien Echols was on The View, that was the era that he was on. She was like, I still don't understand this. I can't understand what you're trying to tell me. Why would you sign papers saying that you're guilty? Why would you sign it? Why would you? And he's looking at her. He's like, I was in prison for 18 years on death row. So my time was ticking away. They had issued a execution date. If you're in that situation, I don't care what they offer you, what you have to do to get out. You're going to take it. She just couldn't get it through her head. She was like looking at him like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you sign it?
No, that's they had a actually like the episode. Last week's episode, not this week's, of Last Week Tonight, they did police confessions on John Oliver. and they actually showed they showed a clip of the NBC or the CBS news anchor talking about a journalist and the journalist said, he's like, because he says, like, the more and more I investigated this, the more I realized that these guys were telling the truth, that they didn't do this. And then the interviewer goes, but they confessed. They confessed. He's like, yeah. He's like, I know, but they didn't do it. And then he comes back, and then like he comes back again. He's like, yeah, but they confessed. And he's like, and then the journalist who's been he can't get it through his head, and he's like, yeah. And so the journalist finally has to come through. He's like, yeah, but you don't understand what they put this guy through to get him to confess. And then at the end of the whole, so John Oliver goes through and explains how this confession works, because he explains this is the gold standard of evidence, is a confession. They call it the gold standard, so they're always trying to get a confession. So then he makes this clip called the Confestigators, and and what they do is they have these two comedians, and they're the cops, and they come in, and there's a guy sitting at the interrogation table, and they're doing all the things that John Oliver just talked about, just trying to just sit in there. And there's a training that John Oliver talks about. There's an actual training they go through that explains on how to get someone to confess, that is based on zero scientific fact. And he says, unlike it says, if they look away from you, that means they're not telling the truth. But if they look at you too much, then they're not telling the truth. So you can basically get it you can make anything so that
this is the cops. This is the actual training that police officers go through, or the detectives go through.
Yeah, it's called the Reid method, REID, the Reid method. And so it shows them using the Reid method, that was a big part of my case. They brought the detective that did the interrogation with me in there, and he was saying, well, just his body language was just telling me he was lying, right?
Type of things.
You just being uncomfortable in that room has enough body language to tell him that you were lying, and that's based on this method. And like you got to watch this episode. I'll have to send it to you, and then
I don't have to watch it. I lived it. I know what the fuck they do to you in one of those interrogation rooms.
But
I know why they don't have cameras in there, and why they don't record interrogations.
But there's still,
that should be the biggest evidence ever that the shit's not legitimate. They refuse to bring a camera in there because they don't want the public to see what the fuck they're doing to you to get the confession.
Oh, the best thing is they can choose what part they present. So they can,
Oh, trust.
Yeah, I know you know.
They did exactly that. They did exactly that to me. They took bits and pieces of what I told them happened that day and put that and then typed up a story and told me if I didn't put my name on it, they were going to give me the death penalty.
But
I'm going to open this bottle.
Okay.
Oh.
But you can.
I'm not drinking. It's not beer. It's coffee.
That's.
But it comes in there.
That's okay.
It's a cold brew coffee. Don't panic.
I'm not panicking. That's all right. But so what was I trying to say?
I can get wired up on that subject too. Oh, geez.
But here's the greatest part. So they go. So at the end of this bit, so they go through, and finally, after, like, the guy's like, they finally get this guy to confess at the end of the bit, and then another officer walks in with a guy in handcuffs, and she's like, "Oh man, sorry that took so long. Here's your suspect," and the other cops don't even look at her. They're like, "We don't need another suspect. We already got this one to confess." And it's like, who are you? And it's like, I just came in here to charge my cell phone, and they all start laughing, and they're all laughing, and then the other officer handcuffs the the suspects you just brought in, and they're all laughing. He's like, well, can I go now? No. You're not going anywhere.
Was this a comedy skit, or was this a real thing?
This is a comedy skit. This is a comedy skit, okay. but they before the comedy skit, they break down the real thing. And here's the best part. The same training method that the officers probably were trained on for you, the same video that they watched, they're still selling. They still sell it on DVD, and it cost $100. And it looked, they showed clips of it on there, and of them doing it. It's 80s. And they have they show one clip is I think is a woman pretending to be a prostitute. Another one is a guy pretending to be a sex offender. It's and they're supposed to be showing they're showing how to read someone and how their body language can change, and they're asking him, it's like, so did you have sex with those kids? I would never. That's what's on the video. It's like, see how he turned away and he averted his gaze? He's clearly lying.
Your freedom hangs in the balance of that.
Yeah, exactly. So
whether or not you turn your head at the wrong time.
It doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't matter. That was the whole point of what he was talking about. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's because they can get anyone to confess to anything because they just browbeat them, and anything can be interpreted as lying because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
The Shakedown is recorded in luxurious Longmont Public Media Studios, and our theme song, Shakedown, is provided by Envato Elements.